The Portuguese stick game is a traditional Portuguese combat art form with sticks whose technical origins goes back to the handling of medieval weapons used in Europe during the Middle Ages. This statement is based on the description of the technique of handling the sword and of the combat tactics against several opponents carried out by King de Duarte in his book A Arte de Bem Cabalgar em toda a Sela, that faithfully represents that which is still executed today in the Portuguese stick game. This technique achieved its highest point of development at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, mainly in the rural regions of the north of Portugal, where it was used for warlike purposes in fights among rival villages or in personal confrontations related to daily life. The stick was the inseparable partner of young boys and shepherds because it let them take the weight off their legs on long walks crossing streams and protecting their livestock from wolves. The technical development of the Portuguese stick game didn't have any interference from foreign techniques, as everything was processed inside the country, as Master Federico Hopfer confirms in his book 2 Words on the Game of the Stick, where he says that among all the physical activities that are practiced in Portugal, this is certainly the most genuinely Portuguese. This fact makes it part of the national cultural patrimony. Beyond being taught in its purer essence as a Portuguese martial art, the Portuguese stick game today also assumes a sport and competitive form with competitive teams at national level. Moreover, it is also used in diverse shows thanks to its almost choreographic plastic beauty. Portugal and its people always had a great adventurous spirit, and likewise in the Portuguese stick game, countless players achieve fame through their actions in well-known fairs. But those fairs caused a great deal of damage to the people who organized them, and the police prohibited citizens from entering the fairs carrying their sticks. It was then that players changed to using canes, claiming that they needed them to get around and thus adapt the technique to this new instrument manipulated with one hand, and thus continued the fun that everyone had already gotten used to. In this way, the first function of the Portuguese stick game was to serve the practitioners as a form of self-defense, and at the same time train and improve combat with a stick, which is a complementary type of training with a smaller object manipulated one hand, and that nowadays is known as stick combat and self-defense. The Portuguese stick game is a physical and sports activity that is integrated both in individual sports and combat sports. Because of countless geographical and cultural barriers, several stick combat forms have developed in the world. The Portuguese stick game was crowned unbeaten champion of the world in the World Championships held in France, in which a range of different stick combat techniques, including oriental techniques, were demonstrated. In the Portugal stick game, one of the extremities of the stick serve as a handle, 1 or 2 hands, while the other one is used to execute defenses as well as attacks, thus taking advantage of the length and the breadth of the stick. In this modality, all the aspects of the combat against one opponent or several opponents exist in numeric inferiority. The object of the combat is to deliver strikes that reach the opponent or opponents, and to defend the opponent or opponent's strikes by executing guards or evasions or both simultaneously. In combat against several opponents, the practitioner of the Portuguese stick game tries to attack continually and in permanent movement in order to attack his opponent and at the same time defend the blows delivered by them, guards in movement. The sport competition are centered on 1-to-1 combat, where it is permitted to reach the opponent in any area of the body, and a point is assigned for each blow that hits the opponent. The fights are carried out within a circumference of 8 diameters, and they consist of 3 assaults lasting a minute of useful time, with intervals of 30 seconds. The winner is a competitor with the most points at the end of the combat time, since he has at least 2 advantage points on the opponent. A judge referee, 4-point judges, and an area judge who is responsible for seeing if some of the competitors go outside the combat area control the fight. The technique of the Portuguese stick game is fundamentally characterized by the execution of attacks using the rotation of the stick, executed in single time and at great speed, and defenses where the adversary's attack is shaken off with complex and demanding movement. The Portuguese stick game attacks are called by various names. For example, in rotation attacks, the blows where the stick has a descending movement are called BS attacks. Stick blows that have an upward movement are called arrepiados, bristled attack. And lastly, those that describe horizontal movement parallel to the floor are called round attacks. All these attacks that include the rotation of the stick can be executed to the left or to the right of the attacker, as well as to different heights to reach the opponent's head, neck, sides, upper body and limbs, and lower body and limbs. On exceptional occasions, we also carry out attacks called pontuadas, where the stick is directed straight without rotation at the opponent's face to reach him in the chest or in the cheek. The basic defenses of the Portuguese stick game are distinguished by their attempt to thwart the opponent's blows by actively shaking them, instead of only slowing them down, which allows the practitioner to take control of his adversary's stick and apply an attack to his defenseless adversary. In advanced technique, we carry out solutions such as the soft guards, where we take advantage of the strength of the adversary's attack in favor of our counter-attack. The advanced guard, where the defender comes close to the opponent entering below the strike, and the short, where there is a counter-attack to the adversary across and avoidance of his attack. In combat in numeric inferiority, where it is almost crosswise attack, tactical behaviors of continuous attack are learned in permanent movement to maintain the opponent at a distance. The contents of this type of combat differ according to the scenario they correspond to, number of adversaries, and position angles. We are going to present the Jogo de Pau, the Portuguese stick game. The Portuguese stick is not really a game, as its name implies. Rather, it is a fighting technique. At the present time, it is considered the only Portuguese martial art from the past that still exists today. Before the Portuguese Jogo de Pau, other medieval weapon techniques that existed in Portugal from the 11th century until the middle of the 15th century. All the Portuguese Jogo de Pau techniques are exactly the same as the ones used by medieval knights, with all their weapons. For example, the long sword and the mandible, large sword, used with one or two hands. In King Dunduat's book in the 15th century, there is an explanation of how to work with a sword with one or two hands, with exactly the same attack and defense names, and also with the same tactics for facing one or several opponents, like those that are used today in the Portuguese stick game. We will begin with an introduction to the basic techniques of the stick game. The Portuguese stick game is characterized by the use of the traditional stick that has a length of 1 meter 55 centimeters. In the past, this stick could have had other sizes, but the typical official federation stick, the training stick, is the 1 meter 55 centimeter long. The typical stick has one end that is thicker than the other, and it is this part that hits. You hold the narrowest part. We will now look at the technical details and technical characteristics of the game. This is the waiting guard. It is a principal waiting guard and one that is most used in combat. In the wait guard, look at the distance between the hands in the hold. As I said, you grasp the narrowest part of the stick. The distance between the hands in the hold is usually similar to the width of the shoulders, and this is because in the stick game, you try to take maximum advantage of the length of the attack. The stick is held at its tip because you have to take advantage of the length of the stick. The position used is similar to the one used in some martial arts, for example, in karate, in which the weight impacts more on the forward leg or the front leg and is normally a low position. We consider that the basic positions are easier for combat, as they are more advantageous in combat. In the Portuguese stick game, most of the pancadas or blows are done on the turn. This is done in exactly the same way as it was done in the medieval times because the weapons were very heavy. To lift the weapon this way, you need to have an extremely strong arm. To avoid this, and so that the attack is quicker, the turn is used. This turn gives the strike more force. Force should not be created by muscular strength, rather, it is based on speed. The more speed there is in the attack, the more force it has. In order that the attack has force and power, as well as speed, we work with the pelvis. The attack is not made with muscular arm strength. Rather, it is done by working with the pelvis. At the level of defenses, I will now explain the basis of defense. Against this type of attack, the safest defense is called defense governs, where the stick is shaken.
Volta. Taca rápido.
This defense type also allows a quick and effective counter-attack.
Rápido e eficaz. Volta. O segundo
A second defense type that is used
que eu gostaria de falar aqui é o tipo usado em
is a type also used in certain Oriental martial arts.
Também orientais.
It is done by taking advantage of the force of the opponent's attack
O ataque do adversário.
to the benefit of our counter-attack.
Volta. Outro tipo de defesa
Another
que se
defense
pode
type that we
usar
can use with the same guard type is the entered defense.
de guarda é uma defesa entrada.
By entering into the opponent's space where the opponent is more easily at the mercy of our attack. Now we will show one more defense form for this attack. We won't have time to do this for all of the attacks, but at least I would like to give you an idea of what can be done, because what we are doing for this attack can be done for all of them.
Vamos fazer agora uma defesa
We will execute a defense where the counter-attack is done without using a guard with your own stick.
sem utilizar uma guarda com o próprio pau.
Therefore, it will be done by means of an evasive move with a quick attack. The Portuguese stick game is by its very nature combat at distance. If we break that distance, we will move into a body-to-body combat, and for the Portuguese stick player, there is no advantage in having the opponent close to you.
Dos muitos erros que se utiliza em combates com
One of the many errors in the Jogo de Pau
no corpo antes
is to advance the body before the stick. We will see this now. Now we will show the progression to real combat, followed by the movement of real combat. The idea here is not defense and attack, but rather to immediately try to counterattack after a defense.
Neste momento vamos fazer uma
We will do a
demonstração
demonstration of the seated defenses.
das defesas sentado. Isto é muito importante porque isto mostra
This is very important because it shows how the Holodapao can achieve a defense on the spot without requiring the body to move.
Vamos fazer agora
We will demonstrate a combat form.
de uma forma de combate. Esta forma é
This form is similar to the kata in the Oriental martial arts.
marciais orientais chamam katas.
We call it forma, and in the one I'm going to demonstrate, we will simulate a combat against two imaginary opponents and the way to solve it.
E a maneira de resolver.
In former times in the fights that were held in the towns and villages of Portugal,
Vilas em Portugal, que era muito característico,
it was very common to use a chopper or lance tip that the stick players used when they wanted to eliminate their opponents.
E portanto, esta forma vai ser usada
Therefore, we will demonstrate this form with the use of this chopper.
com a utilização desta sopa. Também nestas varas de
In
combate,
real combats, this type of stick was used with two iron tips.
era ferrado nas duas pontas, a sopa estava
A cap
dissimulada
concealed
com esta
one end of the chopper,
cápsula,
and the other tip was not even disguised. We will show this form of combat against two opponents. Nuno will demonstrate another form for us, but in this one, he will simulate a fight against a single opponent. We do this as combat training in Portugal. We also do it frequently in exhibitions accompanied by music and most often to the accompaniment of Portuguese music. In this case, we will use some music that adapts very well to the cadence of this combination. Let's look at it.
mostrar agora
We will now show you the kind of solution that the Portuguese stick game presents as a defense against several opponents.
apresenta para defesa
We will only do two as there is not enough space for more.
e também não dá para mais. Ah,
And the important thing here is to demonstrate the technical details for this solution.
a ideia
Here, the person being attacked by several opponents should not be thinking about how to attack them,
bater em todos
because this is clearly impossible,
completamente impossível,
since his adversaries may be too strong, may be as strong as him,
né? Embora o espírito
and although the spirit of defense gives him more adrenaline, more concentration, and more survival,
e até de sobrevivência,
it is not enough because his attackers are equally motivated.
também com a mesma motivação. Então, aqui a ideia não é realmente ele bater.
Here, the idea is not to hit, but rather to escape from the attack without being hit and without really being attacked.
Sem levar pancada, sem ser atacado.
Nuno is faced with two opponents who are going to attack him. We usually say that the best defense is an attack, and this is in fact what we are going to see. We will try to pass through the opponents, always maintaining an angle where he can see both of them while he protects himself swinging his stick.
Em rotação. A partir daqui, consoante
From this position, depending on the distance of the opponent and the situation in which Nuno is attacked, we can use various different solutions.
você pode arredondar, faz dois normais e tá.
He will also be able to use other solutions. other weapon used in the Portuguese stick game is a short cane.
Isto é bastão.
This is a cane of about 80 centimeters that vary from 50 or 55 to 80 centimeters. The cane that is used in training is 80 centimeters.
Lento, lento. Não estás muito rápido. Sempre assim. Redondo. Entrando. Agora os incredimentos. Já está. Aqui assim. E assim. Vamos fazer.
We will do 3 combinations to show the progression. They are very simple combinations with few blows and defenses.
Pancadas e defesas.
We are now going to show the first one. We are now going to present the competition part of the Portuguese stick game. As you can imagine, in competition you have to hit, and in order to be able to hit, you should wear some protection. Because in order for the sticks to have minimum amount of resistance for the defense and attack, they have to be made of a resistant material. These sticks that you see, they're called Musa stick, but they are made of a material that reaches minimum power in the attack and are the nearest thing to the real stick. And so it is logical that they can hurt the body. The body, therefore, has to be protected. As you can see, there are two components. One is the body that is protected by this protection that weighs little and doesn't create too much heat. The body is entirely protected because all and any part of the body may be hit in the stick game. The armor is made of a special kind of protection for the Portuguese stick game, with ice hockey gloves and a fencing helmet. The sticks are also protected with rubber, and we use the already mentioned Musa sticks, which are slightly shorter than the normal stick, in fact about 10 centimeters shorter. The competition develops in the following way. It takes place in a circle with a diameter of 8 meters, and since we are in a recording studio, we have to imagine a virtual space with this dimension. The player who steps outside the circle loses points. The purpose of the combat is to win the maximum points in 3 assaults and 3 rounds of 1 minute. After the third assault, the player that has 2 points more than his opponent wins the combat. There are various rules, but now is not the moment to present them. And so we have limited ourselves to presenting these basic rules. With regard to the stick, you have to hit with these red parts. If you hit with the middle part, it doesn't count. This forces you to maintain the distance.
Guarda. Prontos. Já. Oh. Ponto para os jogadores da direita. Prontos. Já. Oh. Os lugares. Prontos. Já. Ponto, jogador direito. Prontos. Ponto para o jogador direito. Prontos. Ponto, jogador de esquerda. Ponto, jogador direito. Prontos. Ponto, jogador da esquerda. Cima. E descansa.
We have now come to the end of this small sample of the Portuguese stick game. I hope you have enjoyed this first approximation. I would like to thank Budo International for the opportunity that it has given us to come and demonstrate this little known technique. I also want to thank my friend, Master Jean-Louis Brinker, for his collaboration.
A colaboração do meu amigo e mestre Jean-Louis Brinca.
Jean-Louis Brinker is the creator of the BCSD, Baton of Combat and Self-Defense, that he teaches in Toulouse, France, where he is also the representative of the Portuguese stick game. His technique is a twin technique of the Portuguese stick technique, because there are many Portuguese stick game techniques included in the BCSD. I would also like to add that we invite anyone who is interested to come and attend the seminars that we give in Portugal, and also to add that our competitions are open. Moreover, we are open to the idea of fighting against any technique. Finally, I would like to thank all those people who have collaborated with us. Goodbye.